Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Bryan Berry. Bryan has over 25 years of experience in the operations management field. Spending most of his years in the financial services field, Bryan purchased a Schooley Mitchell franchise in 2021 to help other companies reduce their business expenses and optimize efficiencies within their operations environment. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley, for having me. Appreciate your time.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here, especially because as Bryan and I were chatting about before we began recording, is that I have not yet had a guest who does what Bryan does. And I think it's a really, really interesting business concept. So I'm excited to have him on.
Mhm.
For our listeners, Bryan's full bio is in the show notes. But Bryan, I would love to give you the opportunity to just start off by sharing who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, like you said, I spent 23 years in the financial services industry, all in the operations management world. Worked for a few different companies. I reside in Bridgewater, Mass. Been here the last 18 and a half years with a wife and three kids. Between college, military, and high school, it's quite a different span of time with everybody doing different things. So, yeah, and then in March of 2021. I was working with a career coach and that put you in a franchise because I wanted to be able to help other businesses grow and reduce expenses. And we came upon Schooley Mitchell, which I thought was just a fantastic um, business methodology to it. It checked a lot of boxes for what I was looking for in a franchise, where I could work out of my house. I have a great support staff. I can work with literally anybody in any environment, anywhere in the country. So it's really great, and it's a contingency based business where we're able to just help everybody, and we don't charge fees. We share in savings only if we can find it. So it's a win-win for everybody. And if we can help all these different businesses, nonprofits, municipalities, do all different kinds of things and grow, save money, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's a really great concept because as you shared, I mean, the business doesn't have to pay unless you find them those reductions, which is nice. So they're not necessarily taking a risk. You're just there to truly support them.
Right, right. There's no risk. It's 100% just contingency based. Um, and you never know what you're going to find. And you're the share in savings is great because we're still adding to your bottom line. We're putting money back in. You're not
Mhm.
having to try and go out and generate more revenue. By us working on the back end and trying to save in your different expenses that you have monthly or quarterly, it's a great way to add back into that bottom line so you can help solve other issues you might have, because usually money does a lot of things to help those in need.
Yes, you nailed it. I'd say two questions that I have for you that I would love to chat through now is one, you mentioned that you were working with a career coach to change direction. So I'd love to hear if there was like a moment within your career that you're like, you know what, I want to do something different. And then two, along with that, you mentioned that you wanted to specifically help businesses with reducing their expenses.
Mhm.
And so how did you get that idea of wanting to focus on that? So I guess it's like a two-pronged question.
Sure, sure. So for the first piece, working with a career coach, um, it's a story that you almost never hear of. I Working in an operations environment for financial services firms, it's a thankless job. You work a lot of hours. You're commuting all different places. And I just had finally, the kids got older and I was able to try and change careers. So I ended up actually picking up a phone when it rang, which I normally don't do if I don't know the number. And it was a company that actually they place you with career coaches into franchises. It is something that I'd been toying with for about 6 to 9 months.
Mhm.
And it was just a timing thing. It just happened. I don't know why I picked it up, but I did.
Wow. Talk about
And
divine
so,
timing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I ended up meeting a career coach guy. He's out in Northern California, and it was really one of the best career decisions I ever made. We spent about 9 months going through what I was looking for. They work with over 500 different franchises, so it was just very eye-opening to see what actually franchises are. It's not
Yeah.
just your Blinds to Go or your McDonald's. There's so many different ones, so I wanted to look at a lot of different ones that were not your normal typical ones that you would think of. Um, Being able to help everybody, because in an operations management environment role, it was always budget tied. And so I know that you're allowed certain budgets. This is what you can do, and they only give you so much money to play with. But if you can free up more money, it gives you you can reallocate to other things. Maybe I could hire another person on staff to help alleviate some of the extra demands and overtime that I was so accustomed to using and dealing with. Um, so that was great. And the Schooley Mitchell, it's fantastic. Being able to help everybody, just I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear how much you've enjoyed it being now almost 4 years into it, it seems like, right?
Right.
As of this year, 2025.
Right. 4 years in March.
Yeah, wow.
Yep.
And you brought up a point too about being interested in franchises specifically, which I'm really curious about. And I'd love to hear your perspective on why you specifically wanted to purchase a franchise instead of having like I guess non-franchise is the best way to put it, a
Yeah.
non-franchise business to start.
Sure. Yeah. So the franchise, they offer a lot of support.
Mm.
You do have the startup, you have to purchase the franchise, but they provide you training. They provide all that support for you to be able to do all the marketing and help you get off the ground with trying to find clients and things of that nature. And having that support is something I needed because again, working in a large corporate environment, I didn't know the first thing about really going into business for myself outside
Mhm.
of taking some classes and then talking to people, but um, just that overall support that they have. And in reality, Schooley Mitchell, I'm a one person show, but I've got 125 full-time employees behind me that do it all for me. And having that support, that's what it was all about as far as doing the franchise.
Yeah, and you make a great point with that is just like the human. I think resources is the best way to describe it, but like having those other hands on deck who can help out with different things, like helping with your marketing and resources and other things like that. I mean, that's invaluable.
Yes, yes, it's been great for me because again, to try and go out and start your own business and then you got to hire different people because I'm not a residential expert in any of those categories. So, um, well, I know financial services and the operations behind it. That was where I was for so long. So, it is quite a learning curve, but it's great to have. And then I have big support with all the other franchisees. We all talk to each other. We all support each
Mhm.
other. We're really one big group that go and help each other out to all become successful. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it is just really that idea of or notion of community over competition. So thinking about how you can share strategies that you've learned with the other franchise owners and how you can potentially refer clients to one another if it's not a good fit or something they can't help people with. So I think that network in itself is really huge.
Yes, yes. It's great. I mean, you never know who you're going to run into, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, if I all of a sudden meet somebody through networking and they're a business owner, say out in Tempe, Arizona, and if I need boots on the ground for other people, I can share with that franchisee that's local there, and I can work a Zoom angle, go out there, travel out there as once in a while, but I'll have another franchisee that we can share revenue with that can be there on a regular basis to support them.
Hmm.
So it's great how we all can help each other out in different ways.
Absolutely. And you just brought up something interesting, which it sounds like you travel for your clients. Is that right?
Yes, we will absolutely. Right?
Wow.
This is my franchise, so what do I want to
Yeah.
do to be successful? How do I want to, I want to support all my clients as much as I can. So obviously today with Zoom, finally it's been accepted and it was COVID that did it. So that helps quite a lot. But yes, absolutely no issue traveling to meet the different opportunities that are out there and to be able to help different businesses.
Yeah, and I imagine that's what sets you apart as well, is that knowing that you are more than happy to go to wherever your client is and really be the one to kind of feel out these different vendors that they could potentially be working with.
Yep. Yep. It's all about the client. And the great thing is we can customize to what they want. I'm not here pushing one vendor versus another. So, and I'm not a sales rep coming in saying my product's the best. It's really all about your company, your nonprofit. What are you looking for? And we can work together and I hopefully bring in the right vendors because our vendor relationships that we've developed over 20 plus years, some of them in some spaces, I've got a couple hundred of them. So
Yeah.
it's really, really in depth for you and customized to exactly what your company or nonprofit's looking for.
Absolutely. And in terms of the vendor relationships,
Mhm.
do the vendors have to go through like a more formalized application or vetting process to become like an improved Mitchell vendor, or can you really seek anyone, if that makes sense?
No, no, no. We have a preferred vendor list that we've
Mm,
created over the 20 plus years that Schooley Mitchell's been around. Um, with the different franchisees that we've brought on throughout the years, they all have vendor relations and they all go through vetting processes, different levels of processes within, and they've got to prove their value and their worth, and they do that a couple of times and everything works out, then they're opened up to potential opportunities throughout the entire school Mitchell system. So they are, and it's interesting, you have, take for instance, merchant services. I mean, there's so many third party vendors out there, but there's different ones that are customized for different types of industries.
mhm.
So we're able to match that exactly for the type of different clients we have.
Yes, I love that. And you brought up merchant services. So that is definitely a category that businesses can be thinking about where they could potentially reduce their spending. What
Right.
are other common categories that you see with businesses and nonprofits?
Right. So a few of the more common ones, again, the merchant services, because everybody takes credit cards and debit cards. Your telecom space, where it's all your phone systems, your VoIP systems, your cellular phones, your internet services. That's a big area because especially where you have physical locations, you're going to have a lot of phones, internet providers. You may have a lot of people that are maybe out on the road, so they have cell phones through the companies. Um, Shipping, anybody that does any type of shipping, whether it's UPS, FedEx, your e-commerce companies, your manufacturers, everybody uses shipping, so that's a big space we're in. And then the top four, the other one is the waste category, waste disposal. So
Mm,
anybody that has, again, physical locations, you're creating all different types of waste. And we've been able to vet and have all kinds of vendor partners that it customizes to you. And that allows us really to be able to negotiate really, really great rates.
yeah.
And that's the key, is to get those great rates. But we don't only just, it's not a one and done thing where we just negotiate rates and send you off on your way. We actually will monitor your invoices for a few years after that, and we recover any billing errors. If you have vendor relations issues, we handle all that. I have teams behind me that's what they do. So we're still there to support you and make sure that you get everything that you're supposed to.
I love that. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think that is a huge selling point to people is that you don't just make the connection, wipe your hands, and you're done. You're there for them for the next few years to help
Right.
them, A, with that transition process, move from one vendor to the new one that you found them, but then also ensure that everything is smooth sailing from there and that they don't run into any issues.
Right, right. And we handle any issues, and there's no added fees. It's still a part of the shared savings. We're not
Mhm.
charging you extra for that stuff. And because we're in the entire marketplace literally week to week, there are other opportunities down the road where I can bring it and say, hey, Ashley, here's an opportunity from vendor XYZ or your current vendor. What do you think? Is it something you're interested in?
Mhm.
So you don't have, now you're not wasting your time trying to shop with different vendors. Most companies are going to look at two or three vendors, maybe four, if they don't have a large staff to be able to do that. Again, depending on the category, I might have 150 vendors that will reach out to get what's customized and best for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
imagine that there's probably been instances where you help a client switch to one vendor and then help them switch to another if you find even better savings down the line.
Yeah, we've done that. And to be honest, though, about 70 to 75% of the time, they end up staying with their own vendors.
Mm,
We just get them better rates, and then we make sure their services are what they're supposed to be. So we have that negotiation clout that we've been able to develop over the years, and it's great. So that if they really do like their vendors, we're able to find some savings. And it's interesting because when we go to present our findings, we usually give them three or four different options, and the savings may not be option A. It might be more of a customization that they're looking for. And maybe that savings is the second amount,
mhm.
not the greatest. And you can pick and choose. it's entirely up to the owners and the companies what they want to do, which way they want to go.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too, is that businesses might not necessarily pick the vendors that's going to save them the most amount of money, but just might pick a vendor that, like you said, can provide a more customized option or maybe even include more deliverables or features for the price that they're currently paying.
Right. As long as we're able to save them money. That's the crux of it. But yeah, so I maybe option B is a little bit less savings, but there's more deliverables and more customization to what they're looking for. And
Mhm.
it makes their life easier. So it's really what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that with some of the categories, you might have like 100 or 150 vendors within that. I
Right?
can imagine that for the client, it might be a little bit overwhelming to think about that large number. So,
Yep.
what's your process for really breaking it down and kind of giving them
Sure.
like the few that you think is truly the best options for them?
Yep. So what we do is you would sign a service agreement. It's a page and a half long. It talks about that you would provide us with what we need, which is basically copies of a contract and invoices.
Hmm.
That you have the power of go or no go. Our fees, which is a share of savings. And what we do is we sit down with you, depending on how many categories, but about maybe 15, 20 minutes to a half hour per category. And it's a Q&A session fact finding of what you're really looking for.
Hmm.
So we create that baseline for you. It's all about optimization as well. So maybe you're a larger entity where I have a client where they had 7 different telecom vendors. We
Oh,
optimized it.
wow.
We got it down to 4 vendors, streamlined things for them, but got them a lot of savings as well. So if we're able to get that in-depth conversation with you about what you're really looking for, then we can go out and we'll target certain vendors and then have them come in and put bids in, make sure it's customized to what you're looking for, and then ultimately present you with, 3 or 4 different options in a perfect world. And you pick and choose what you want. We're
Yeah.
there along the way to do and guide you through that.
Yeah, that's great. And I can imagine that when you have that consultation with the client to kind of run through their expenses, I'm sure there's probably been plenty of times where you've pointed out an expense that they can reduce, and they're probably like, I never would even thought to look at how I can get that type of service or whatever it is I'm paying for cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, it's very eye-opening and amazing.
Hmm.
I'll take, for instance, trash and waste. Everybody just wants to make sure that their dumpsters get emptied, right?
Hmm.
But there's lots of little things. Take for instance, a common thing is overage charges because covers on the containers, if they're only open 2 inches, they're going to charge you an extra fee.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's an extra fee because it's considered overage, where we try and, say, hey, maximize, or we'll look at the dumpster sizes, and depending on schedules of pickups, we'll look at can we do different dumpster sizes, different schedules of pickups to maximize that value for you, along with getting the better rates.
Hmm.
So there's different ways to attack that and approach it. And a lot of people I've run into, again, clients in the waste space where they don't realize they don't have a cap. So every year, year over year, these companies are increasing whatever percentage they desire.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a fixed cap at only 2 or 3%, 5%. It's just one of the smaller things that if you don't know these intricacies of the industry, there's a lot of money being wasted.
Right. And then that's one of the many benefits of working with a professional like yourself who knows those nuances and
Right.
has like your pulse on all of the changes that are happening and all of those great relationships with vendors too.
Right. Right. Yep. And that's all we do full time. That's what
Hmm.
we're here for. So you can work more on your business
Yes, that's what's most important,
instead of being
definitely.
in and all that. And like I said, there's so many different little things that we can help out with.
Yeah,
And
I know
still, it's
in
all about adding to your bottom line. We don't charge you any extra fees, so it's all about that savings.
yes, definitely. And I know you mentioned too within your bio that one of the categories you help with is facility supplies. So it sounds like you don't just focus on services, but also goods. Is that correct?
Right. So, yeah, all the different supplies that your businesses might use, from toilet paper to mops, pens and pencils, paper, all those different things that you do, that you order, that you use. Yep, that's one of the categories that we're in, where we'll go and negotiate with the different vendors. Lots of times people have like scheduled pickups, or even if it's not quite on a schedule. It might be quarterly, depending on when you run out of things. We'll kind of set up and look at schedules and look at how much you actually use
Mhm.
and work in that space for you as well.
Yeah. And I can imagine that throughout the past 1 2 years, 1 to 2 years specifically, with inflation rising and so many layovers happening at companies, I imagine that your services have been even more beneficial because companies are kind of strapped or squeezed a little bit with their
Right.
finances due to this stuff. And that's where someone like yourself can come in and really help optimize their finances in that sense.
Right, absolutely. And that's one of the things we look to streamline.
Hmm.
We look to, take for instance in telecom, we'll call every phone line and make sure that you're actually using them all. We'll look at your data rates, data plans. Do you need 2 gig versus unlimited? Again, with waste, we look at dumpster sizes, frequency of pickups, the the scheduling of facility and office supplies drop off, so you don't really have much extra stock.
Hmm.
We look at all that to do that as an optimization piece along with getting you the better rates.
That's perfect. And at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of January 2025. So I'm curious to hear where you see your Schooley Mitchell business going in the next year, goals that you have, or even exciting things that you may be working on.
Well, it's all about building out those networks. I've gotten a lot into the education space,
Hmm.
working with anywhere from colleges to private schools into the public school sector as well. Trying to get into other different verticals and nonprofits really is a big goal for this year. Um, Especially nonprofits where grant money is only can't be used for administrative parts of the nonprofit. We come
Hmm.
in on the administrative side, and donations, they're tough because a lot of people in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, with the inflation, it's been so expensive. Donations are down, and if we can come in and help and save in administrative costs, and that just frees up so that they can do more with what they have. Because again, donations can be tough. So that's one of the big targets is I'm going to try and get into the nonprofit space in 2025.
Yeah, and I think that's a great sector to go in. And I know that you personally do a ton of networking. So I'd love to hear more about that, just how you're able to find the right connections and grow your business that way.
Yep. So it was a bit of a learning curve, right? Learning how to B2B, learning how to network in general. Coming from large corporate America, I didn't know anything about networking.
Yeah.
You're in big brick buildings all day long, 8, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? So learning the whole networking was quite a learning curve. And
Mhm.
it took me a year and a half to figure out that I really needed to get into the B2B space and then trying to seek out B2B groups. There's not a lot of them, at least that I've come across so far. But I've managed to get into a couple, and now you're creating that, building those relationships in the B2B space where we're all looking to help businesses.
Yeah.
Um, the good thing about Schooley Mitchell is we come in and we're looking at categories, but we can also, by saving money, hopefully help businesses in other aspects s- be able to use that extra cash. And in the B2B space, you have some companies or they work with certain things. They're just a website designer.
Mhm.
They're just they offer insurance. That's it, right? And sometimes their rates can go higher and higher, like insurance. It's industry agnostic. Everybody's raising their rates. They don't have a choice. We can come in, hopefully save money in, say, telecom or waste or uniforms and linens, facility supplies, and be able to move that freed up cash over to help cover insurance increases.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. One thing I'm curious about is if you have a great case study or client example you could share. I know you mentioned the client that you helped that had 7 telecom
Yep.
vendors and you helped them streamline them down. But is there any like really cool outcome you were able to get for a client that just makes you excited to think about?
Oh, we did a municipality in the telecom space and saved them over $1 million a year.
Oh my goodness.
It's Now it takes 6 or 8 months to do that because it's quite complicated. But yeah, you never know. Like I said, that one education client I have where we went from 7 down to 4, it freed up their time, but it also saved them tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And they're able to reallocate that to other things that they have going on.
Yes.
They were actually doing some construction on the outside of the building, one of the
Hmm.
buildings. so being able to reallocate that over. Um, yeah, I mean, working with public school systems, saving the money to be able to reallocate that because it's already they have their budgets and their buckets, but reallocating and freeing up some of that cash because now I'm almost there, but hopefully going to be able to hire two teachers.
Hmm. Yeah, that's nice.
And that's just within the same budget, just by us being able to, again, get better rates and services. They can reallocate that budgeted money into a different bucket, and hopefully they're going to be able to go out and that saves taxpayers.
Yes, you're right about that. And with two of the biggest benefits you provide to customers being saving time and saving money, it also sounds like convenience is really what you sell too. I mean, instead of someone having to speak to 10 different vendors, if you're helping them streamline, I mean, that's convenient for them, and
Right.
convenience is a great thing to pay for.
Yes. Yep. It's all about that. It's all about them and saving them. Yeah. The time, the money, and the convenience, right? So now they're not wasting time shopping around, trying to deal with different vendors. Um, Anytime they have salespeople that come chasing them, they just refer them right out to us. We handle that for them. So yeah, convenience, it makes things a lot easier for them and it saves them, and that translates into more time for them to either work on the business, in the business if they choose, maybe a little bit of relaxation and vacation time. Who knows?
Yeah, so many
You know,
options.
there is.
What would you say a typical day looks like for you within your role, or even a week? Like, how do you typically spend your time throughout the days?
So it's again, I'm in multiple networks. I go to chamber events, we do some telemarketing and email reach outs. Um, Go to different luncheons, try and volunteer at different places. And and obviously that creates general meetings with potential clients.
Hmm.
And then, I visit clients on a regular basis. Um, and yeah, a lot of it's networking. It's not something where I can just put a sign out in the front window and say business expense reduction and optimization. Um, So yeah, that's typical days and weeks. Yeah, and just trying to be at events and help out where I can and promote Schooley Mitchell.
I love it. Brian, as we get closer to the end of this episode,
Mhm.
one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. So, what are your favorite places to frequent?
So I like to go to the restaurants. I go to Emma's a fair amount of time in Bridgewater. We've been to Barrett's some of the times, and you give back. I've spent a lot of time in the Youth Soccer Association and volunteering there. Um, it was great as my kids were growing up. We'd spend time there. I was a tournament director, so bringing in again, that's a nonprofit and running an annual tournament where it would bring in tens of thousands of dollars to cover fees for maintenance of all the grass fields.
Hmm.
Um, so I trying to support and help. I go around and help try and get food for the local pantries because that's been quite a big thing in the last 2 years, especially with inflation. And
Yeah,
trying to
food
do that.
insecurity. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
I love that. Brian, this has been a really great episode, and I have appreciated having the opportunity to have you on the show. And I would love to give you the space to share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to reach out and connect further.
Sure. So you can go to Schooley Mitchell's website and you can search. They have all the franchise out there. So if you go to schooleymitchell.com/bberry, that's my own webpage. You can reach me at brian.berry@schooleymitchell.com. And email address, again, brian.berry@schooleymitchell.com. And it's with a Y. It's not Brian, it's Bryan.
Perfect. And I will
Yep.
link to those places in the show notes so that way our listeners can easily click through and connect with you from there. But thank you so
Yep.
much again for coming on today's show.
I appreciate your time. Have a great day.